Hi, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Coyotes Corner podcast alongside Dave Vest. I'm Luke Lapinski. It is the 5th of July, which means the 4-day weekend has concluded. Dave, yes. I will pretend to care how your weekend was for the purposes of this show. How was your 4th?
Thank you, Luke. Thank you for that sincere inquiry.
I do what I can.
I had a great 4th of July weekend. 4 days off in a row. It felt like a year. I haven't had that much time off. It's been so busy this off season. But it was very relaxing. I spent a lot of time in my pool, a lot of time behind the grill or in front of the grill.
Hopefully not at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
And, of course, fireworks on the 4th of July. Yeah. So lots of good stuff. A lot of baseball, apple pie, Mom, Chevrolet.
Just an all-American weekend for Dave Vest, which is just like all of your weekends. This one just happened to be a 4-day version of it. So you mentioned in there lots of stuff going on with the Coyotes, and you know we've talked about this in the past. The off season for the Coyotes always seems to be very short, and in years past, I've tried to whittle the summer down to like 4 days so we can get right back to the next hockey season. And I will tell you, it's not that far away now. We're basically 2 months away from camp opening and everything starting up for next year, but a lot of stuff has been going on. It's not like we're just sitting here talking. There's been a draft. There's been movement. There's been a prospect camp that we're going to get into. In fact, the conclusion of that started the 4-day weekend. It was a pretty good way to start that 4-day weekend. But let's start around the NHL draft that took place a little over a week ago now. And let's start the morning of that draft with the trades that John Chayka pulled off that, to me, kind of changed the direction of this season in some ways.
Absolutely. No kind of about it. It absolutely did. I mean, it was just a very busy and a very memorable couple of hours there being in Chicago for the draft. Of course, let's talk the details. The first trade that came about was with the Chicago Blackhawks for Nicholas Chalmerson, a defenseman. Coyotes getting him and sending Connor Murphy to Chicago.
And Laurent Dauphin.
Correct. Yes. What's your quick thought on that?
Well, we'll get to the second trade in a second, but the second one surprised me a little bit less. This one, I won't want to say it came from out of nowhere, but I was a little surprised that Chicago was willing to part with Nicholas Chalmerson, and I understand that Chicago's the sort of team you should be targeting in trades because they're so up against the cap every year, so they're going to have to deal away good players and probably not get 100% value in return for them. That's huge. My first reaction was, I know Oliver Ekman-Larsson knows Nicholas Chalmerson. I know he's a big fan of his game, not from talking to him that day, from talking to him, just over the years. And I think we're going to see the best of Oliver this year, which is huge.
Yeah, they're going to play together. Chalmerson has already said he doesn't mind moving over to the right side. So he can play with Ekman-Larsson. That's the plan. There's no secret about it. No. John Chayka has come out and said he was brought on to be in the top pair with OEL.
He's not right-handed, but he can play the right side. He's done it before. It's not
right.
It's not just like, oh, well, we need this guy to play the right side. If that was the case, then teams would do that all the time. He's done it before.
Right. And, they're only about 5 years apart. Played together on Team Sweden. I believe they were even in the same defensive pairing at the Olympics or the World Championship or both. So they know each other well.
Their styles play off each other pretty well, too.
They do. So they won silver medals at the Olympics together. So, expect to see them together from day one of training camp.
And what this does, too, for people that aren't completely familiar with Chalmerson's game, he's more of a defensive-minded defenseman. And he said, I don't know if it was to you or whatever, but after the trade, maybe it was in the conference call, that he is going to focus on moving the puck more. And that's great because that's what today's NHL is. But he's been a huge part of 3 Stanley Cups in Chicago. I think Joel Quenneville's reaction when they had to trade him is a reminder of how much he meant to that team. But you have to be able to move the puck, obviously, in today's NHL, but that's not his prominent role because him playing his game allows Oliver to do what he does best, and that is move the puck. And so we've seen this in years past when Oliver was first breaking into this league. If you can put him with a stay-at-home defenseman, it allows him to not just give up on his own defensive responsibilities, but it allows him to take some chances, and that's where he's at his best. So that was sort of an under-the-radar, almost out-from-nowhere great trade for the Coyotes. There's no other way to really describe it.
All right, and then about an hour later, Another press release comes flying down the wire. Another trade, the Coyotes and the New York Rangers.
Yeah, so the Coyotes get Derek Stepan and Antti Raanta from the New York Rangers. They end up giving up Anthony DeAngelo and the number 7 pick in this year's draft. What were your initial thoughts on that one?
Well, as you said, this one wasn't as much of a surprise.
No.
I had heard for a while that those were 2 players from the Rangers the Coyotes were attempting to extricate. Derek Stepan, for a long time, we've heard, in the hallways and the whispers in the press box that that's a player that the Coyotes have had high interest in. So it comes to pass, and Derek Stepan is coming here. Antti Raanta is going to just slide into that number 1 goaltending role. No secret there either. It was pretty much announced when the trade was made.
It's crazy when you look around the NHL, and specifically at the draft that took place later that night. I believe it was 20 of the first 21 picks were either centers or defensemen. I mean, there's such a priority on those 2 positions, and within an hour, like you said, the Coyotes got a top-pairing defenseman who's established. There's no question what Niklas Hjalmarsson is. He's a top-pairing defenseman. Derek Stepan, who can be your number 1 center if that's what you need, and they got their number 1 goalie within an hour. I mean, I can't. I'm sure it's happened, but I can't remember over the last 5, 6, 7 years a team being able to do it that quickly. And there's always some question, how are these guys going to perform on a new team? But boy, I think you know what you're getting in Hjalmarsson. I think you know what you're getting in Derek Stepan too, and he gives the Coyotes a lot of options because he's pretty consistently, about 20 goals, 60 points throughout his career.
Right.
And you can't ever, predict how many games a guy's going to play in a season, but he pretty consistently plays high 70s too. And so there's a pretty safe bet you're going to get about 20 goals and 60 points from Derek Stepan. But he can play defense too, which you need from your center. He has that sense of defensive responsibility, and to me, he plugs in as your number 1 center until Dylan Strom's ready, or however things shake out. And it just gives the Coyotes options at a position where you have to have options.
And in goal, Antti Raanta is a guy who's chomping at the bit to be a number 1 goalie. He's been the backup for Chicago and for the Rangers behind Corey Crawford and Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, I can't think of 2 better goalies to be groomed by, if you will, to be a starting goalie. I know he's extremely excited for this opportunity. We had a chance to talk to him. He can't wait to get here and slide into that number 1 role. And it's going to be exciting to see how it plays out, to see, as you said, within 90 minutes, the complexion of this team changed dramatically.
Specifically on Raanta, too, I know that there are people, there's sort of 2 schools of thought. There's the thought of, well, yeah, he did it in New York, playing behind that defense. Can he do it in Arizona? I mean, it's a different team. And he's been a backup. He's never been a starter. But he's been groomed by Henrik Lundqvist, and that wasn't like it wasn't a Brett Favre Aaron Rodgers relationship where they didn't speak to each other. He's been groomed by Henrik Lundqvist. He outplayed Henrik Lundqvist for stretches last year to the point where he was just playing over him. I'm not saying the Coyotes just went out and signed Henrik Lundqvist. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact of the matter,
sure?
Well, maybe, who knows? the point I'm trying to make is this is how you get good goalies in the NHL. Typically, if you draft them, you have to wait so long for them to develop that look, guys like Carey Price, Marc-Andre Fleury were the number 1 pick, and they step in and they ultimately are the guy for their team. But this is kind of how you get number 1. You get him in his mid to late 20s. He's done everything he could possibly do as a backup. He's widely regarded around the NHL coming into this offseason as a guy that's going to be a starter somewhere. He's ready to start. And for the Coyotes to pull him in there, now you've got that tandem. And like you said, he's going to step in and should be the number 1 right away. That's a pretty nice option to have in net. He had more shutouts than Carey Price last year, and he played 30 games.
That's awesome. I did not realize that.
His goals against, what was his goals against, like 2.26?
Yes.
I'm looking on your whiteboard, but it's not up there.
No.
But I believe it was 2.26.
And I said yes before I even looked it up because I trust you that much.
I'm pretty sure that's a pretty specific number for me to randomly have in my head. He put up really good numbers the last 2 years, and yes, he was the backup, but it's not like he played 5 games. I want to say he played over 50 games the last 2 years, so that's an exciting one.
And as we've stated several times now, all of this happened on the Friday of the draft, which is the first day. It's simply the first round of the draft. All of this happened before lunch on that day.
Yeah, you could tell it was going to be a day.
So then after that was the draft, the first round of the draft. And obviously I was there, and you were at the draft party here in the Valley. And as you mentioned earlier, the Coyotes were supposed to pick 7th overall, but they had to part with that pick in order to make the trade with the Rangers that we just detailed. So the first pick the Coyotes made in the draft this year was not until number 23. It was still the first round, but it was a couple hours in.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, too, about that is the Rangers trade felt like part two of a lot of different moves the Coyotes have made. Like, it felt like it really put a bow on some previous moves the Coyotes have made. And one of them is when they traded Martin Hanzal at the deadline, and they get the 23rd pick in the first round. So now you have 2 first-round picks. And we've seen the Coyotes have a couple first-round picks, a couple second-round picks in recent years. Well, the thing is, they've already got prospects. They've already got a lot of high picks. And when you have, it's not like having the number 7 pick in this draft is a bad thing. But when you also have the number 23, well, then all of a sudden that number 7 becomes expendable, and it doesn't even really hurt you to give up. And that's what I would say about Chaika so far. The trades he's made with the Coyotes, and a lot of them, he's bringing in key pieces without really giving up a ton of tangible parts to what the Coyotes are building. I mean, even last year, getting Chychrun and Krause essentially for imaginary cap space. So he's done a remarkable job. I know it's still very early in his career, but I don't know how you can argue with the vast majority of trades he's been able to pull off.
Okay, so let's talk about P.O. Joseph, Pierre-Olivier Joseph. He's a defenseman. The Coyotes made him the 23rd overall pick. What were your thoughts on that?
I wasn't shocked that they went defense. Like you said, me and Bob Heathouse were at the draft party, and we were on the air at that point, and we were trying to sort of predict. And you get 23 picks into the draft, you're going best available at that point, I'm sure. But I think your tiebreaker is you want a defenseman or a center. But the Coyotes now have some centers. It made a lot of sense. We saw him at prospect camp. He looks like a pretty decent puck mover. He gets the puck up the ice. He seems comfortable out there. And from what I've seen with him in a Coyotes uniform, I know it's only been a week, but it was impressive.
6'2", 163 pounds. That's the big, I don't want to say concern, but that's the big issue around the pick, is that he needs to mature physically.
Yeah, I think
17 years old. I'm sorry, he just turned 18.
That's a good point to bring up, because you look at this draft, and when you talk to people that are just sports fans, but they're not really hardcore hockey fans, they're like, okay, when is Joseph going to play right out of the gate? He's not. There's a good chance like one guy out of this entire draft, not for the Coyotes, and the entire NHL is playing right out of the gate. I mean, it'll probably be 2 or 3, but I was talking to you the other day when I was trying to figure out how many guys you can reasonably expect to step right in and play just around the league. 7 guys total in the last 2 years have done it, where they've played right in their draft year. So, yes, Pierre-Olivier Joseph's not going to play right out of the gate, but he's got the stuff you can't teach, and that's you can learn the NHL lifestyle, and you can put on the weight. So, I don't know, I like the pick, especially at 23.
Great kid, too. We had a chance to meet
Great
him,
attitude.
Spend a week with him. He's just had a smile on his face the entire time he was here. Went down to the Diamondbacks with him for the first pitch. He threw
Decent
a strike.
first pitch, yeah.
I thought it was a strike. A little high, but I would have called it a strike.
Depends who the ump is.
Yeah.
But it was close.
But he's just a good kid, and very excited to be a part of the Coyotes. And it will be interesting to see, his development and his maturation. You mentioned 7 guys that played in the league last year out of the draft. Coyotes had 2 of them, Chychrun and Keller.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but that's not going to happen here. He's going to go. Pierre is going to go back to the queue.
Well, and specifically Chychrun, too. I guess I should have qualified that. Guys that have played like 60 or more games right out of the gate over the last 2 years, and you're talking like McDavid and Matthews and Chychrun. I mean, those are 3 of them right there. So, yeah, that's just sort of a broader look at the entire draft in general. It's Nolan Patrick's probably going to play right out of the gate, and that might be it.
So P.O. Joseph went first on Friday. Then, obviously, we made it to Saturday for rounds 2 through 7 of the draft. And the Coyotes went into that with just 5 picks. But, Luke, they ended up picking 8 players on that second day.
Yeah, and it was John Chaika that I thought articulated the sort of strategy there pretty well. And I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it was, you get to this part of the draft, and this year's draft has been talked about as not being as strong as the last 2 because there's not a McDavid and there's not a Matthews. That's at the very top. There's still going to be good players in this draft. So when you get to day 2 and you're in rounds 2, 3, and beyond, certainly, just get as many picks as you can at that point. And if half of them pan out, Well, instead of having 5, you had 8 or something. So it's just, you're playing the percentages. These guys have obviously scouted all of these guys that they're taking, but you can't predict that they're all going to be instant NHLers or NHLers even down the line once you get to rounds 3, 4, and 5. So get as many picks as you can.
Coyotes drafted 4 defensemen and 4 forwards on that second day with their 8 picks. So overall 5D, 4 forwards, and then we saw them all about 48 hours later. Here in the Valley for the start of the prospect development camp. And I saw you there every day. I was there every day. Let's share some thoughts.
Well, I will zoom right ahead to the actual game itself on Friday night.
Zoom away.
Once again, Clayton Keller. And we were both at the game last year at Gila River Arena, where they weren't the only guys that stood out, but I recall Clayton Keller, Jacob Chikrin, and Aiden Hill and net standing out pretty well. And Aiden Hill wasn't at the prospect camp this year, but last year. Well, obviously Chikrin stood out enough where he played a ton of NHL games and looked pretty good. But Keller once again really stood out, and he obviously has had a big year since last year's camp, playing college hockey, playing very well, being one of the best freshmen out there, winning a gold for Team USA in the World Juniors, looking good in the World Championships against NHL All-Stars. It was weird. I remarked to somebody at the camp during the game, how many teams have a player in their prospect camp that was one of the leading goal scorers in the World Championships a couple months ago? But that's the Coyotes have.
Right. Other players, obviously with the development camp, the older guys stand out. I mean, it's just logical. And with that in mind, Christian Fischer was there. He practiced a few times. He had a little injury that they didn't want to risk making worse, so he did not play in the game on Friday.
Yeah.
But Christian Fischer, obviously, at least in the drills, and he just looked like a man among boys out there.
Yeah.
And I know you had your eye on Dylan Strome.
Yeah, I mean, Strome is obviously a focal point of this team, and I say that I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if he comes into camp and doesn't make the roster right out of camp. He plays in Tucson for a little bit like Brendan Perlini did last year. But what if he does make it right out of camp, right? So there's a lot of potential there, and it goes back to the step-on move. If Strome's ready, then it changes how you play him. If he's not, it changes how you play him that way. So again, they have options at center. He was definitely somebody that we were all watching closely, and I got a chance to talk to him. This was prior to the games. This was on Thursday after one of the development sessions, and he talked about a very busy 2016-17 season he's coming off of.
Dylan, first of all, I mean, this is your third prospect development camp. You've played some NHL games now, so I would imagine the comfort level is maybe a little bit different than it was even your first time, right?
Yeah, for sure. Just knowing a lot of the people and a lot of the management and staff around here and the trainers and stuff, it just makes you more comfortable. So just trying to help out the guys that are their first time here, and if they ever need anything, just where to go or what to do or what time to be there. It's just trying to help everyone out.
That's kind of an interesting spot to be in as such a young guy. I mean, do you find some of the newer players asking you for advice just on life in the NHL in general?
I mean, a couple times, not really. I mean, I think everyone kind of understands what the life's like, but it's more just where to go. Some of them have never been to the rink before, so I don't know the trainers' names or stuff like that. So just trying to help them out any way possible. I mean, I'm sure by their third year they're going to be helping out the first year guys as well.
So now you've played in the NHL, and not only that, you were around the Coyotes for quite a bit last year, so you got to kind of soak in the experience. How much did that help you going back to junior, having the year you had, and kind of stepping forward for this season?
Yeah, it was obviously a good year for myself, I think. Just took away a lot of positive from it. I mean, I got to experience everything I wanted to experience. Got to playing the gold medal of the World Junior game and playing the World Cup final and win an OHL championship. So a lot of the things that the Coyotes wanted me to do, I think I did, and I worked on and improved my game. So I'm definitely coming into camp ready to go and ready to make the NHL.
Yeah, you went back to junior. You had a very specific plan, like you just said, and I'm assuming some of that was the Coyotes, but some of that was you as well. So do you feel pretty focused and set up here heading towards next season?
Yeah, I think for sure. I definitely feel focused and ready to go. I think it's only the start of the summer, so I've got a lot of work left to do. But I'm looking forward to keeping at it in the gym and keeping at it on the ice and keep working hard. So I'm going to prove to everyone that I can play in the NHL right away and step in and be an impact player. So I'm going to try to do my best, and hopefully it all works out come camp time.
You had ridiculous numbers in junior before last year, but it seemed like last year you took it to a new level. I mean, you set the record for points in the game in the Memorial Cup. Like you mentioned, you were at the World Juniors and everything. What was different for you last season?
I think just being a year older, more mature. I think having that NHL experience was big. big, and kind of just being comfortable with my game. I think, I trusted myself a lot. I trusted myself to make plays, and I put myself in situations where I know I can produce and be the best player I can be. So I thought a lot of nights went really well. I mean, I was playing on a great line, so it's pretty easy to play when you're playing with guys that get 65 goals a year and over 100 points every year. So it makes my job a lot easier, and we had a lot of fun. We were a really close team, and we really bonded. And I think that's key to a winning culture. Is everyone's good friends and everyone likes to get along, and you like coming to the rink every day. If you like coming to the rink every day and you're playing hockey and you're winning, you're having fun and scoring goals, it's a lot of fun.
And you took on a leadership role too. I mean, not like you didn't have that in the past, but you really sort of took that to a new level this past year.
Yeah, I got to be captain of Team Canada was pretty special. So at times it felt like if something went wrong, it was going to be your fault. But I think when things went right, it was also on you that you were doing a good job. So those are the things that you got to be aware of and you got to be cognizant of when you're leading the team and leading especially a country that likes hockey so much. So when there was a lot of pressure on the line, I think that was big for me. Just learning how to be a captain on such a big stage where so many people are watching and so many people care about it. So you got to represent yourself well at all times. And I thought I did a pretty good job of that last year. And I was happy with like I said how this year went out. And it was pretty good.
So that's Dylan Strome talking on Thursday morning after the developmental session out in Peoria, getting ready for the prospect game on Friday.
He looked a lot different. I thought he just looked like a man now.
That's what they told him to do, right? They told him to go out there and then spend the last year really sort of just, I don't know exactly how much weight he put on, but he put on weight. And I made a comment on the first day of prospect camp. There's a lot I want to see. That's the most important thing. I want to see that Dylan Strome put on some more weight, because when you see him, even in the prospect game, like his hockey sense, I know that term gets overused, but I think it was Cam Dineen he set up for one of the goals. It was just such a slick move, and he scored a goal later on. He gets it. He knows how to play the game. It's just a matter of getting him up to NHL size, and he definitely took steps over the last 8 months.
Let's talk about 2-3 players from the Dev Camp game that stood out that maybe you wouldn't have expected to stand out. I'm going to start with Brandon Hickey. He's a defenseman that the Coyotes got very recently. Played at BU with Clayton Keller. They were teammates, and he is slated to be the captain at BU next season. He's 21 years old, full beard, but I thought he stood out defensively. There were a couple of occasions where he and Clayton Keller were kind of battling one-on-one in a breakaway, and at least one of the ones that I saw, Brandon Hickey won. So
he did.
Obviously, this is a game in July. There's not a lot of significance to it, but I thought he competed well and stood out.
He was. He absolutely did stand out. He probably would have been my answer, actually, because of the play you're talking about. I believe at that point they were playing 3-on-3.
Yes.
And Keller, I felt like had been out there forever, and the puck just follows him around the ice, but especially in 3-on-3. But yeah, Hickey caught him sort of from behind, and then Keller had another breakaway a few minutes later. But yeah, that was interesting just because they have already been teammates before, and you could tell there was a little bit of a friendly rivalry there. I just go back to Pierre-Olivier Joseph. The thing that stood out to me about him, and I know this was not an NHL game, this is a prospect game, but it just seemed almost effortless to him, and I mean that in a good way. He just seems very comfortable out there on the ice, and the puck's coming to him, and he's very confident what he's going to do with it, and he gets up the ice, and he triggers something for the forwards, and that's today's NHL. It's what it is. The league has changed so much even in the last 3 or 4 years, where those are the guys you need. Defensemen that can move the puck up the ice. They're part of your offense now. And not to say they never were, but they really are now, and he just looked very comfortable out there for a guy that, as you said, just turned 18, just got drafted a couple days before the prospect camp.
Right. Obviously, this wasn't a game. As you said, it was a scrimmage, but the kids took it seriously. You could tell. It was very fast-paced. I thought a lot of effort, a lot of hustle. They didn't award a number 1 star for this game, Luke, but I think if they had, it would have gone to Cam Dineen.
Yeah, he scored the goal that Strome set up, and he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. He was a second-round pick. This is somebody they expect to be a part of this, a pretty big part of this team's future, and you're right. He stood out. He absolutely stood out.
He scored 2 goals during the game, and then in the Just for Fun shootout, he had a real nice goal.
Yeah, he did.
So he had 3 goals, and what was even more impressive about it is that this was Cam's first game since December. He suffered a real serious injury, a torn MCL, playing in the Ontario Hockey League last December. This was really his first game. Again, it wasn't a game per se, but a scrimmage. It was a competitive scrimmage.
It was.
And I know I had talked to Cam before the game. He was so excited to play because he hadn't played in so long. And we had a chance to talk to Cam after the game, and here's what he had to say. First of all, Cam, what were your thoughts on this game and the way it was played? Obviously, we're in the middle of the summer, and a lot of guys don't even know each other. But what did you think of the game itself?
I thought it was a really fast-paced game. Everyone came here to play, obviously, and everyone was really dialed in, and everyone just worked hard and did what they had to do. It was a lot of fun.
Do you think it's a good way to end the camp with a game like this and in front of fans like that? Did you enjoy that part of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was a lot of fans here, which was great. It's great to see that and just know that they're supporting us. I think we were all pretty excited to see that many fans. And, I think most development camps end with kind of a game, but all are different. And I think ours just kind of shows how many great prospects we have, which is really cool.
We talked the other day about how excited you were to play in this game because you haven't played in a real game since you hurt your knee in December. Obviously tonight, a good showing by you, 2 goals and then a shootout goal. What are your thoughts on how you played?
I thought I played pretty well. I mean, Stromer made 2 really nice plays to me, and I was just kind of wide open and just took a shot and it went in both times. But it was good to definitely get back in a game situation, and I think I just need to keep building off of that this summer.
What did you think of the camp in general?
Last year it was kind of a learning experience for me. I came in not really too sure what was going to happen, and this year I came in knowing that I kind of had to be more of a leader, and guys would be watching what I do. So you just have to work hard and stuff like that, and I thought it was really fun.
And what's next for you this summer? What do you do after you leave here?
I'm actually staying here for a couple weeks now to train with a few of the other prospects and skate with them, so that'll be good. And then maybe get back to New Jersey for a week or 2, and then I'll be headed back up to North Bay for preseason training up there.
So your thoughts after talking to Cam there?
Cam, to me, is very you can tell by his comments, he's a very sharp kid. I think he's a very intelligent kid. He's from New Jersey, so what do you expect?
Oh, boy.
He's from Toms River, New Jersey, which I know very well. My mother lives there.
They had a really good Little League team.
They did.
I don't know
won
why
the
I
Little
remember
League
that.
World Series.
Maybe that's why.
1998.
Random. Really?
Yes.
Okay.
You know who was on that team? Todd Frazier.
Really?
Yes. Go win a bet with that knowledge I've given you.
Well, not if I have to prompt people to. How do I draw people into that conversation?
So the camp was great. The game was fun. The crowd at the game.
The crowd was insane.
Go ahead.
I got there. The game itself started at 5. And look, you love this. This is what you want. I pointed this out last year, or 2 years ago, I guess it was now. You go to the Ice Den for these prospect games, and last year was the Gila River Arena, but 2 years ago, I mean, it is absolutely packed. It's absolutely packed. Like, I play hockey there pretty consistently, at least once, maybe twice a week. I've been there, I can't even tell you how many times. We've been there for Coyotes practices. We're obviously there for camp every year.
It was overflow.
I parked somewhere I didn't even know existed. I'm not even kidding you.
Did you have to take a shuttle in from your parking spot?
It would have been better probably if I had Ubered from my car to the front door, but that's a great sign. And when you walked in, they were on the right sheet of ice for people that are familiar with the area that couldn't get there for whatever reason on Friday, and you couldn't even get in the door. I mean, it was absolutely jam-packed.
It was. It was an overflow, standing room only crowd. It's the only way to really describe it.
Yeah.
The game was also live streamed on the website, and looking at the numbers here this morning, a lot of people were watching. So it was a great way to cap the prospect development camp. Obviously, that's over now, and we're getting into the heart of July and August here, Luke. But something to talk about as far as a carrot dangling in front of us. We both have a copy of the 2017-18 Coyotes schedule.
Well, and the one last thing I'd quickly say about the camp and it being that full, I know that there's, I'm sure some of that is I miss hockey and it's July and I want to watch hockey. That's understandable, and I am that way myself. But I do think that speaks to the fact that the prospect pool for this team is still very strong, and that's remarkable considering the guys we saw make their NHL debuts last year and guys that, played pretty consistently. Like Christian Dvorak wasn't at prospect camp. Brendan Perlini, these guys weren't there because they're NHLers now. And yet there's still more and more people coming out to these things every year here in Arizona because there's still a lot in the pipeline. So it's just a great sign for the future of this team. As you mentioned, though, the schedule coming out, two of the Coyotes' first 3 games, their home opener and I believe Vegas' home opener.
Correct.
Against the Golden Knights. So We'll talk about the rivalry in the desert.
Instant rivalry.
Yeah,
just add water.
We're not going to waste any time. Each team's home opener is against each other, and Vegas will be in the Pacific Division. I'm excited for this.
I am too. I mean, obviously, the only thing constant is change. Someone wiser than us once said.
Sounds like Shakespeare, Edison,
Maybe.
Einstein,
Mark Twain,
Dave Vest.
No, one of the above.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a new team, obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Coyotes get to play the Knights 5 times. I don't think any other team is playing Vegas more than that.
No.
So it's going to be exciting to watch that rivalry unfold. The Coyotes start the season on October the 5th. It's a Thursday night at Anaheim. And then, as you mentioned, the home opener against Vegas on Saturday, October 7th. A couple of things from the schedule that jumped out at me. Road games at the beginning and the end. 8 of the first 13 games on the road.
Yeah.
So that's the entire month of October.
Not as chaotic as it was last year, though, when they started off with
6 out of first 7?
Yeah, that was pretty brutal last
Unfair.
year. Yeah, it really was. And I think for where the Coyotes were in their development at that point, I think they did a good job of almost making it into a positive. I mean, if you have a young team, you want to be getting better as the season goes on. The Coyotes very clearly were a much better team in the second half last year. But you're right, that was brutal last year. So still sort of road heavy in October, but there are at least 5 home games mixed in there. They're not just gone for 2 weeks.
Right. And then at the end of the year, 8 of the last 10 are on the road. So that could be challenging.
Yeah, and they wrap up at home against Anaheim. So they start and end with the Anaheim Ducks this year. But
book ended.
And once again, we will see Austin Matthews and company in the Maple Leafs here right around the holidays.
Right. And the Thanksgiving week, if you like hockey, this is the place to be. The Coyotes have 3 games and 4 nights around Thanksgiving.
All at home.
All at home. Wednesday, Friday, Saturday.
San Jose, L.A., and Vegas. So a lot. The Pacific Division is now, it's grown by a team, right? I mean, we're now up to 8 teams.
Correct.
So that is obviously going to make it even that much more challenging. But I like the fact they're playing Vegas very early, too. I mean, they're going to be learning who each other are, basically, and the Coyotes will be able to jump on them. I think most people are pretty excited about this upcoming season because of what we saw in the second half of last year.
Month of January, very interesting when you look at it as we are on the page here. Not a lot of games. The Coyotes have their bye week early in January, and then the All-Star games at the end. So there's only,
9 games.
9 games total in the month of January, and 6 of them are at home.
I feel like, when you talk to people around NFL teams, they say we'd like to have the bye week right around week 8, 9, 10, right in the middle of the season. It kind of gives you sort of it's almost halftime in the middle of the season. And that's essentially what the Coyotes get, because then they come out in February and play 7 home games and 4 road games. So that's sort of your chance to make a push there in the second half. But it's nice to have that rest in January. And for the entire month, what is it? We're going from December 27th, they play in Colorado, and then until February 3rd when they play in LA, which isn't even that far. Between those games, they'll play 3 road games.
Yes. And one of them in San Jose.
Yeah, they're all against teams from the Western Conference. So that's a real good portion of the season for the Coyotes to regroup and set up for the second half.
That's a great observation, Luke.
Thanks, Dave.
I really, really like working with you.
Just for that, now I really do care how your weekend went.
How was yours?
It was good. It was relaxing.
Yeah.
I covered a little baseball, so, still did some work, but it's baseball. It's 4th of July. I can't argue with that. Got anything else you want to throw in here?
I don't. I think in looking at our board, we're in pretty good shape here.
Might do another one of these in a couple weeks.
I would imagine so. I would imagine there's going to be some news coming around the team quite rapidly. So be ready for another podcast in reaction to all that.
Sounds good. Thanks to executive producer Doug Cannon for putting this all together, getting the interviews in there and everything for us. For Dave Vest, I'm Luke Lapinski. Thanks for listening to the Coyotes Corner podcast.